Good morning. Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. You know what? It's Twitter Talk Wednesday. So we got a whole crew. Perry Busby down in Florida and Fort Lauderdale, Andrea Carter in Cincinnati, and of course, the one and only Nakia Cooper out in Texas. What's up, y'all? Where's the life? I said, what's up?
Hi, we were on mute.
See, there's no time to be muting.
Technical difficulties. Hello from Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas. And she said it just like you
Right,
expect
my
somebody
hometown.
from Texas. Yep, there you go. Andrea's out in Cincinnati trying to hold it down there, and Perry's out in Fort Lauderdale. And you know what, Perry? Nice place to visit.
Where anything is bound to happen today.
So look, let's get started. I wanted to get started, so I know everybody's got something to say this morning about what's on their Twitter feed. But I wanted to start off with the NBA, the National Basketball Association. They are reducing the age from 19 to 18 for the NBA draft. It allows high school players to make the jump. Now, some say, this means that you're telling, because NBA, keep in mind, is about 80+% Black, right? And so some saying you're telling these kids not to go to school, not to get an education, but you jump into the NBA, you make $3-4 million. And then Jermaine O'Neal, who was Indiana Pacers superstar years ago, he came in at 19 years old. And he said, well, they don't tell, these tennis players, they don't tell these golf guys to go to college first. How do you guys feel about this NBA rule that now allowing these 18-year-olds? Because I know there's a lot involved in that.
I objected when LeBron James got drafted, and I object now. They are being drafted to play a man's game. NBA is not high school. NBA is not college. It is a man's game. Men are rough. They push, they pull, they fight. And these kids are not mature enough. There may be gentlemen, but have you seen them play on please? Come on. It's an adult male basketball. These guys are not old enough to understand that when that guy, they understand the game, but they don't understand when that guy pulls a trick on them, they're not mature enough to understand why. They haven't comprehended it yet.
Okay, but Andrea, let me throw this out here. And Perry, you guys, Nakia could jump in on this. The other side of that, right? It's the money, right? And these are kids, and exactly. most Black kids, especially from the hood, the first thing they say, I want to buy my mama a house, I want to buy my mama a car, and the contracts are astronomical, and you would think that the league's best players will be set for life, but many times that's far from the case. You got people like Shawn Kemp, Dennis Rodman, Latrell Sprewell. Those folks, they lost they went broke because they didn't count the costs, right? There's attorney fees, there's agent fees, there's taxes, and then they play in how many different cities that they play in, 30, 40 different cities, all different taxes, right? So that $3 million, and I forget which player was saying this, but Antoine Walker, I think it was, former Celtics guy, saying that money is gone. That $3 million turns into about $150,000 easily.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, Stacey. It's definitely about money. And I think that a line can be drawn to the latest success of Deion Sanders and HBCUs in the arena of football, and as well as the NCAA making a decision about student athletes and their ability to make money, doing the NFTs. So I think, basketball, while progressive, has always stayed ahead of the curve because once the rule went in, I think that was back in the 90s, I guess, or maybe 2000s. Then that's when you saw the proliferation of the AAU leagues, right, where they had these leagues. And so that was their way of really doing scouting. Well, now I think this is another wrench in this game in terms of how the NBA is going to profit and how NCAA, and ultimately no one's really worried about the athlete.
Well, and
we all know that.
That's true. And Nakia, so here's a good example of my point. So Josh Childress, I don't know if anybody remembers Josh Childress. He played for the Atlanta Hawks and other organizations. He played 15 years in the NBA and overseas. He was drafted 6th overall by the Hawks in 2004, which when you drafted that high, the money is there, right? Mm-hmm. So he made over $60 million over his career, right? But he's one of those ex-players who said if he didn't start getting a hold of his money and watching it, he would be broke like so many others. He understood that his $11.4 million rookie contract would go a lot quicker after taxes and agent fees. That 8 figures gets dwindled. He says you've got $5 million over 4 years. So that $1 million house that you thought you had 11 million, that you had 10 million more, that house then becomes more expensive, more money, more problems.
Okay. Can I say something?
Absolutely.
And I'm a mother of a child who is right now and I know zilch about basketball, right? And I actually had an extensive conversation with my son's coach. My son is off in San Antonio right now with George Gervin's Academy. He just graduated from high school in May, and he is 18 years old, and he is training with them and George Gervin and everyone that they have this you go on to try this elite training before you enter college. Right. And they have these schools like IMG Academy in Florida and all of that. I say, let them play. Now, I don't have any skin in the game. I just have a child that I'm trying to make happy because mama makes her own. And I really mean that. But this is the thing. And if he was to make it, that's fine. I haven't even had the discussion with him about going to the NBA. Right now, he wants to be the best college ball player that he can be. Right. So I'm trying to feed that dream. And his father, unfortunately, passed away in 2020 and during the height of the pandemic. So I'm trying to make these decisions. So as this young man's mother, and recognizing what's going on, they have a shelf life. They have a shelf life. And you only have, and their motto is one chance to be great. This is what Strength in Motion, where he's at. That's their chance. One chance to be great, and slow is quick, right?
Right.
So if he gets his shot at 18 years old, and whether he lasts 1 year or 2 years or 10 years, let them play, because who's to say if he goes into college and injures himself and that one shot that he could have had is gone, right? I would love to say this. It is my responsibility and the parents' responsibilities and the coaches who claim they love them responsibility. These children who are playing, they've been playing AAU forever. The parents are so dedicated. We've been going around. I am tired, you guys. I am tired. I cannot take another hotel room on the weekends. But let me just say this. We are sitting here and we're saying that they're not mature enough. Of course they're not. But guess what? Liken them or akin them to a child actor. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen's agent made those little girls executive producers before they knew their ABCs, kind of, right?
I laugh because you mentioned them. Of all people. You
look at Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, who still have their money. You look at how Raven Simone's parents set her up, right? Before she, could really get into middle school or elementary school, right? They controlled and they did that. Then you look at someone like Gary Coleman. And then you say, why does this person have something to say? It's about our education and our background and our village. I say, let them play, but surround them with a village to where they will not fail financially, and eliminate your child's entourage. Because
there you go.
As we know, like MC Hammer has proven, that entourage will take you down. And so I will not wait for him to get injured. If they give him a shot, hey, go take it.
I am all for what you just said too. I've always said that. What if they get injured in college? They have no earning power whatsoever. And 18 years old, look, they sending them off the ward at 18. They're sending them people that 18-year-olds are going to work in warehouses. They're going to work at the post office. I don't have a problem with it, but I'm 1,000% with you, Nakia. Let's try and help them financially educate them so that they know how to hold on to their money, or at least make their money work for them. Look, the other thing that's going on is the woman king. The woman king. Now, seeing black women as warriors may upset some people, right?
We
but
warriors.
I'm right there with you.
Come on, sister. We got you. We got 2 men, 2 women on here. Y'all better pick a side. Pick a side.
Look, she said, wait a minute now. But here's the thing, though. You got groups like ADOS, the African descendants of slavery, that group saying, hold up, we ain't for this, right? Because the tribe there, they were involved in the slave trade. Now I'm looking at some tweets, right? For instance, people have different takes on this. Young person, apparently young person at Mouse Abolition says, sorry, but it's suspicious to me to see people saying boycott the woman king because the Oya Empire Kingdom of Dahomey were involved in the slave trade. The point here is, and I lost her tweet. Here we go. Were involved in slave trade when similar critiques of our flags means death and Hamilton have been challenged or ignored altogether. And then one other at Lizzie Lemon Drop says, can't watch The Woman King because the tribe it depicts participated in the slave trade. Now, excuse me while I watch 40,000 movies about the British monarchy.
Exactly.
I would just say this is part of our history. It's always been mentioned that African tribes sold their enemies into the slave trade. It is that has been littered throughout the history. We just never really focused on it. Now, in The Women King, the slave trade is the backdrop story in the story. And I would just say that whoever objects to it, they don't know their history. They don't like our history. And if they want to be a denier, they might as well support what's going on with critical race theory, because the majority community doesn't want to relive what their ancestors did to us. Right. I'm sorry. You can't have it both ways. If we have to accept their history and force them to see it, then we have to force and accept our history. And truth is truth. It comes out, whether you like it or not. You know what? The Woman King really truly is a beautiful story about a woman who is a leader who finds her illegitimate daughter, surprisingly, and that daughter, what she does and becomes just like her mother. That's the main story. The backdrop is the slave trade. It happens.
Well, Hotep Silas says, I'm telling you that Woman King movie only exists so white folks can shift blame for their own sins.
We have sins too. We need to accept it. There were sins through the civil rights movement. There were sins throughout history. Come on, grow up. This is what happens when you don't keep up.
But what happens when other people drop way in? Like you what is his name? Greer showed me this yesterday. Bill Maher.
Oh, God.
What happens when folks like that? Wait, listen to him.
Everybody who could afford one had a slave, including people of color. Mm-hmm. The way people talk about slavery these days, you'd think it was a uniquely American thing that we invented in 1619. But slavery throughout history has been the rule, not the exception. Mm-hmm. The Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, Romans, the Arabs, British, the early Americans, all the way up through R. Kelly.
Okay.
So okay, R. Kelly took it a little too far, but anyway.
No, he took it. You know what? But it's easy for him to say stuff like that, right?
Well, I mean, we've been throughout our history, we've been saying it too. It's just that when our history was not being taught in school, when I was growing up.
But look, my thing is, if Bill Maher can say that, then what prevents Bill Maher from saying the N-word all the time? He sounds like that's what it looks like to me. Like, you know what? That's what it sounds like to me. I without saying the word, it looks like he could sit up there comfortably and saying, "What are y'all talking about? These people were slaves. These people were slaves. Y'all had y'all slaves." I think he's out of pocket there. And here's a guy that likes to date black women, by the way.
right. Among other things. But I think also again we get into this little word trickery around slaves as though the definition itself never evolved. You know, when we talk about the Egyptians in slavery, you know, it was not European slavery, which was the most brutal of any slavery in human history. So let's be clear about it. But I think when we start using these words that now take on these different meanings, we're saying one thing, but it is being captured and regurgitated for propaganda use. Let's just put it for what it is. That's just straight up propaganda in terms of there being some idea that blacks have this idea that we want to constantly remind whites of that history, as well as I don't know of any black person that's really trying to relive oppression as some sort of a war. Yeah, but yet that's what we put it out there like we always want to talk about our oppression. No, we don't.
No, we don't. Right. You know, David Youngblood makes the point the institution of slavery in America was unlike anywhere else at any time in history. And I dare anybody to say he's wrong.
Well, nobody is going to say that he is wrong, because what started, or there's two different ways you can take this conversation, because Bill Maher, yes, what he said, I have to tell you, was factually correct. With slavery was not limited to the Africans, and like you said, but it was what happened when it hit the European slave trade. You know, that it was what happened to us, and it just so it happened to us. What happened to us affected us for generations, right? But
well, we're the ones that continue, right, Nakia, being oppressed. You know, there were other slaves.
We're going to continue to be oppressed if we start picking and choosing and getting a chip on our shoulders every time somebody points it out. That was a comedian, and I'm sorry, it's not a laughing matter, or you know, he has a comedy and he's satirical. He's pointing out something that we know. It's no longer an elephant in the room, okay? It's no longer an elephant in the room that R. Kelly had sex slaves or whatever in his house, okay? But we don't compare them. To say that we boycott Viola Davis and the Woman King because of something that was historically true, and it was actually based on a true story. If you look at the News One's breakdown of why they want to boycott the Woman King and all of that, and they want to say, oh, because of the, you know, it was brutal, and that we, you know, we got in, that they were beheading people, right? They're saying you're not talking about all that, and they're saying, and then they were participants in the slave trade. Well, you know what? I think we need to go back to our Southern church roots when we say, forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do. I think that nobody could have imagined that if they were to do like Dave Chappelle did and think and go back in a time machine and go back to what was happening in the days of yore, if they knew what it was going to turn into, I'm sure nobody probably would have done that. Well, right? Also, those were times of war. Those were times that was the practice then. It was practice, no matter how we hate it. I hate that it happened. I hate that I don't know where I come from. I hate that I have to guess, you know, and rely on whether or not what is that called? The DNA ancestry.com. I hate that I have to rely on them to see if they could get it right. And I don't
better watch that DNA stuff. They're gonna use that against you.
Exactly, right. It happened. But
you know what, Nakia?
Let me tell you something. Conversation, Stacey. I hate to say this. I don't want to. If they don't make movies like The Woman King that make us challenge our thoughts, our new generations will not investigate. If they don't have somebody like a Bill Maher who pisses people off by saying the crap that he did, right? Which he has a right to say, but that doesn't mean, hey, it's a little sensitive. It's like, brother, you're not a brother, but you could have, eased up on that. But hey, I can take that. I can take the shots, because everything that you say, I can have a conversation with my children to say what I can give them that interpretation.
Right. But here's the other thing too. So it's just another attack, in my view. Black women can't do nothing.
Black women.
Gina Prince Bythewood, this is her movie. Viola Davis, lead actress. You got those other wonderful Black women in this film. And so we're gonna have to find a problem because it's Black women.
Yeah.
That's what I think it comes down to. We're gonna have to,
Well-
and that goes for Black men as well. We got to find a problem because a Black man is not behind it, or the white man is not behind it.
Well,
I think that's a problem here. And let me just say this, and I'm gonna throw it to you, Andre. I know you got something to say, but I gotta lift this up because Claudette Perry writes something I think is important. In the movie, she says the king acknowledged the king's participation in the slave trade, but made a decision to use other organic means of trade rather than their people. These comments are a result of Black people not knowing their history nor being interested in their history.
Well, I think it's well, number one, I have teasing. I went and saw The Women King last week with a group of Black women. We were empowered, even though I didn't like the fight scenes. That just drove me nuts when the knife went to anyway. But it was empowering to see a woman lead her people through decision making, through her actions, just through her morality, and how she got the king to accept change, even when he didn't want it. And his wife was leading him in a different direction. And she had to even counter the wife to do it. And I think that goes back to what women had to do behind the scenes, even during the civil rights movement. There were a lot of women leaders who have not been acknowledged, but were silently behind the men, prodding them along, helping to support what needed to be done. And I think also it comes to the point of when we look at our female candidates today, how many men actually vote for them? How many women go out and canvass and get their doors slammed in their face, and where they have a hard time getting men to support their candidacy? And sometimes they have to have the other communities support them because their own people will not support them, especially men. This is a deeper issue.
It's
a deeper
hateration.
issue. It's generation, but also on top of that, we are several generations away from people who have memories about the civil rights movement. Our children, I remember sitting with my mother in a church crying over the assassination of Martin Luther King. I was 4 years old. That's my only memory, but I can touch the civil rights movement in that way. I have a personal history. Today, our children don't have anything. All they know is what they've been told by their grandparents or their great-grandparents, and or told, oh, just ignore it. They're benefiting from the success of what we did.
But
to that is Perry. Perry, I'm gonna come to you. I want to say this too because I want to set this up too because we talked about Bill Maher and he's correct. But again, I gotta lift up what Claudette Perry says about Bill Maher in this instance. He says he was not completely correct. Blacks in America who owned enslaved people. This is important, y'all. Okay. Blacks in America who owned enslaved people bought their relatives from white enslavers to keep them together. Perry?
Yeah. Perry, no. Right. And to that point,
that's part true.
When I was there was a recent study that said that if in cases where you don't know your grandparents, parents who don't know their great-grandparents, should I say, great-grandparents, there is an 80% likelihood that your great-grandchildren will not know you. Mm-hmm. And that sounds pretty startling. But as we continue to talk now and put civil rights into this, pantheon of antiquity, this is history, as if we have not made history since the civil rights. This is history that we are passing, and I think that we are still having this continual cycle of we don't know our history and bypassing history, engaging in arguments about our past.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting. We've been having a discussion here at the Cincinnati Herald about where we are in history right now, kind of like using the terms reconstruction or redemption. Are we in a reconstruction? Are we in a redemption? Now, when we were in reconstruction, blacks led. When we were in redemption, all of our rights were stolen away and Jim Crow sprung up. And everyone is looking the time after the presidential election, after Obama left the office. It feels like we've been put into a redemption mode instead of reconstruction mode. Mm-hmm. Instead of eyes being open, eyes have been shut, closed, critical race theory. People want to deny, and now with the Women King, people want to deny that history. You can't have it both ways.
Well, can I speak to the?
Yeah, Nakia, let me throw. Yeah, I want to throw this to you because I think you the person that I should throw this to. Melvin Pollard writes in that when Black women talk about being quote unquote empowered, I ask over what and whom in America.
Oh, no, he did not. Oh, no, he did.
We're empowered over, and it's Melvin Pollard.
Yes.
We're empowered over ourselves and unfortunately against and over the people like you, Mr. Pollard, who like to throw those kind of things out and think that we need to prove ourselves to you. Let me say something. When we speak about something, and we're speaking about Viola Davis, who is a Black female, who is a powerhouse actress, who has played in a lot of movies, and this is what I'm understanding, she put in the work to give an Oscar-worthy performance. And we do these hashtags, Oscar so white, when we boycott them, not giving Black people their props and their dues, but we're asking for someone now to boycott and give just yet another reason to try to shut out a Black woman from something that she possibly rightfully deserves, right? So when we talk about what gives us this empowerment, we have to do things like the Woman King. We have to keep going and supporting our own. We spoke earlier about the NBA and forgot to talk about the WNBA. Well, we don't have to, this wasn't a discussion about that, but just the same way, Mr. Pollard, that the WNBA players don't even get a fraction of the money that those women are putting in the same type of work. Their bodies are being abused the same type of ways, and yet we are still behind. We are going to always be behind if we are not empowering each other and ourselves and looking in the mirror to say, you are all of that in a bag of chips, despite what anybody has to say about you. So we are fighting against everybody out there. And I hate to tell you, well, I love to tell you, we're dominating.
Go ahead.
Dominating. We are going forward, and we will not be silenced. And I am. If we had to cut off a few necks as kings, queens, and all of that, hey, it's guerrilla warfare out here. And we're talking about war. What I just want to say, though, if I take it to an entertainment portion of it, and I'm sorry, I just wasn't trying to go.
No. This is why we had to call. We had to call on Auntie for that one.
If we have to talk about that, you're talking about people with getting upset over a period piece that is based on a true story, right? It's based on a true story. Okay, all of the stuff in those movies are not always correct. And I would wonder, and I would really want to ask you guys, how many of you said to go out there and boycott Russell Crowe when he played Maximus Decimus Meridius, which is one of my favorite movies of all times because I just love that fighting and everything. But how many of you boycotted Gladiator, right? Which was full of historical inaccuracies. But that's okay. But you held him. You held Gladiator as a cinematic, it was cinematic gold, or it is something for the ages. And you have a woman that came along. She worked out. Her abs are ripped at whatever age she is, and she's dominating on that. And when women go there and they feel that empowerment, it wasn't about the slave trade. It wasn't about the other things that other people are trying to make it about. It's about Viola Davis leading this film like people lead other films. And they kicked butt, took names. And historically, they beat box office expectations
Yes.
with what they did, because that piece was not tied to a sequel. This is what they wrote. It was not tied to a sequel or a superhero film. And yet they won. So we take away everything for that because you want to get involved. I get it. I get it. The slave trade was something, it was an atrocity for mankind, and we're going to suffer forever. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a movie that has some depiction of what happened.
Well, I think didn't they? And Nakia, if you remember it with Roots, for instance, when Roots first came on. Well, here's the thing, though. But here's the thing. The point I'm making with Roots is that the very beginning, when those folks came over from the U.S. and England and all that stuff, they depicted some Black tribes aiding the slave. So this is nothing new in that sense. But to take it out of context,
that's right,
is the problem. To like you said, to boycott is a problem. When you mentioned that Russell Crowe thing, you're right. There's so many other things, right? And I agree wholeheartedly. Viola Davis, I'm going to always have a little affinity for her. For no other reason. Well, listen, on a personal note. So my very first book that I wrote was with Stevie Wonder and his mother. And who read the audio book? And you can buy it today with her voice, Viola Davis.
Viola Davis.
And I spoke to Julius, her husband, a couple of years ago. Reached out to her. We were trying to book her here on the Black Press, and reached out to her. This was about 2 years ago. And Julius and I talked about that, and he was like, that was a really good time in their lives. Things were that's when Viola was starting. Her star was just about to rise, and so they talked about. I was so pleasantly surprised and gratified to hear that she still thinks about that project when she read the book called Blind Faith. And Simon and Schuster, and it was put out, and she did such a tremendous job. So if ever we do the movie, which they have been working on forever, we hope that Viola Davis will do the movie and play Stevie Wonder's mother, because the voice was incredible. But anyway, that's a personal rant right there. But she's a tremendous actress. There's only a handful in her category, right? I mean, you have Angela Bassett, and you know who don't get the credit? Speaking of, I don't want to go off on the other side, but Lynn Whitfield. I think, oh my God.
Yeah. Oh my
I love some Lynn Whitfield.
Yeah.
Karen Lewis.
Say again.
Karen Lewis.
Karen Lewis.
I think, is it Karen or Sharon? Yeah. She was just on Blackish.
Oh, okay. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. I always mess up everybody's name, so forgive me now. But I think also what the Women King also presents, a woman who is confident, who believes in herself, knows what her job is, and makes sure she has a high standard that holds everyone else to that standard, which is the same today. And which is unfortunate. Men are intimidated by a confident woman who knows her stuff and will not take stuff from anybody. How much of that is playing off the screen that's intimidating men today who happen to see the trailer, not the movie, just the trailer. I'm not even. I mean, it's when I was sitting in that audience, the women were applauding. They were going, "Ooh, oh," but they were also experiencing what she was going through in some aspect. They could identify as a leader what she had to do, what she had to say. And I think from that, when we say empowerment, not only do we recognize leadership, we also recognize and also can relate to her experience in many, many ways of where she had to be silenced, where she had to be told, don't do that, and then had to make the decision, you know what, I got to do it anyway, and I hope to God it works out. Yeah. But she will accept the consequences.
Listen, here's one other topic that might rather ruffle the feathers, and it does. If it doesn't, then maybe you're not a parent, maybe you don't care. But how about this bus driver?
Oh.
OMG, look at this.
Get back there. What a pain in the neck you guys are. Get out of here. Get back there.
He told them to get to the back of the bus, and he's pushing the black kids, the two black, her and her little brother. I mean, look, I think he some disciplinary action came down. I don't know if he was fired or suspended, but and the mindset today, we talking about, you know, how we need to be that village. I think Nakia mentioned that village earlier, but this mindset today with critical race theory and everything, they feel like now more empowered. People like that feel more empowered than ever, because I gotta tell you, that can't be my child.
Well, and also, can I also add, we got to do a better job, because that was not the place for that man to work. Just being sensible. I have grandkids, and I love them, but I can't put me on the bus with 30-something kids. I mean, and I understand that this is a resource, and I'm not trying to make an excuse, but I'm just saying, when we put ill-prepared people in a position, you get these crazy results, and we can't look past
But he
this.
was single. But Perry, in addition to that, he was
Great.
singling them out.
I'm not making an excuse for it. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying this leads to a bigger problem when we just throw. We need bus drivers, and we get a senior because he's available and he meets all the low standards to get there, because we don't think a bus driver is worth. But these are our kids, and bus drivers are just as important as the school teacher, as the principal, as everyone else in that child's life.
Okay.
So I'm not excusing that. I'm saying it is the responsibility of those in charge.
Oh no, I 100% agree with you what you said, Perry. But I think, like I said, Auntie Nakia is about to take the belt off again.
Let me tell you something, okay? Because you know,
wait a minute. Time out. Andre killing me. She act like she in the what's that, in the pew of the church. She keep going.
I'm just. All I can say is go ahead. I know what you're about to say. Go ahead. I'm right there with you.
Okay. So for number one, I do, because remember, oh gosh, I work in the newsroom. I have to be there in 2 hours. All right. I work in the newsroom and I see these stories all day, every day. Right. We are writing these stories. We just out here in Houston, Texas, had to write up a report. 2 young Black boys were just charged for threatening to shoot up a school. And of course, you know, I hate to say it, statistically, our kids don't do that, right? Now, they said it was a joke and it's a hoax, and that's what a lot of people are coming to their defense, and hey, these boys are just doing that. So, you know, there's so many things when we talk about our kids and about our educators and about the way they handle them. And Auntie Nakia, 20 years ago, because I'm like now in my fabulous 40s, and I'm like, oh, okay, hey, I made it. When I was in my teens and 20s, I was someone who worked at a daycare, okay? And I worked with toddlers and everything. And so sometimes those little boogers are out of hand. Cannot say that that's what was happening, right? I'm going to play it. I do not know if that bus driver was pushing that child because he was Black or white. I know that sometimes we have there is a big issue right now with educators and caregivers of our children who are fed up and pushed to their limit, and they're doing the most, right? They're not being properly trained. They are not getting the resources that they need to make it here. And that's just what it is. So we keep putting our children out here. Our children are sitting ducks, you know, and that's the thing, because I haven't read all the details of the story. So that's why I won't comment on whether or not it's a race issue. It could very well be, you know, because first thing you do is you look at an old white man, you think, oh, okay, you know, old Tom, he don't like a bunch of Black people, but he'll tell you he has many of them over at the barbecue, right? Or some of his best friends, you know. But the thing about it is bus drivers definitely don't get the support that they need. They're handling a bunch of children that they're trying to govern and get home safely. And some of them should not even be licensed to transport our children.
Yeah.
So that's one of those huge issues that we have to deal with. And I think the way we deal with it is making sure that we vote during these midterm elections, that we attend the school board meetings, that we are present when, you know, we need to at least pay a visit to the bus driver. Get on and say, hello, my name is such and such. You know, you take a day off. I know we can't always, right? But we have to be those people that have to really be there for our children and advocate for our children, because we don't know who's watching our children, and our children are getting a bad shake at things. And guess what? And our children sometimes, not these two kids, because what I saw on the video didn't look like they were doing that, but a lot of our
they said, Nakia,
terrorizing teachers.
They said 6 and 10 year the front of the bus is reserved for 6 and 10-year-olds. And so in this case, these two apparently were that age, and they were going to sit in the front, and he was sending them into to the back. So we don't. Again, the whole story. Maybe there's more to it, but
maybe there's more to it, and maybe
he put his hands on the boy though.
Yeah,
right.
I know, but that comes to what a lot of what the educators are doing right now. It's like Mortal Kombat in these schools these days. And what did Joe Clark do? He walked around with a bat and called himself Batman, right?
He used to call me Crazy Joe.
And it's not an excuse. What he did, he deserves to get fired for it. I just don't want to I'm not comfortable making it a race issue yet, but yes, he absolutely deserves to get fired for that. And the parents should definitely be outraged.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I watched the video and I saw him push the child, and I was like, oh, mistake. Whether or not why the reasoning behind what went on, I don't know. I mean, you could look at it two different ways. One, they could have said something to him that broke his nerve, and he did what he did. And or the other thing is that a Pandora's box has been opened, and it has not been closed, and it continues. That box continues to be, that top continues to be pushed more and more off the box because people are off the chain. The only difference now than before with that Pandora box is that people are now reaping the consequences of their actions. So they may think they can get away with it, and they might get away with it once, maybe twice, but you know what? There are consequences to actions, and they're feeling the hard reaction of their actions.
Years ago, when I was in grade school, elementary school, it was nothing. Well, I went to a school which it was basically, you know, you had a black principal, black teachers, but we had white teachers too. But the teachers, we had one teacher, Miss Sales. She had this block. It was like a wooden
corporal punishment, baby, the paddle.
Right. She called it the friendly persuader, and it was, this thing hurt. And if she wasn't next to you, if you was across the room, she would actually throw it at you, hit you with it. You have to retrieve it and bring it back to her. Back then, it was okay for the teacher. You know, I had a teacher wash my mouth out literally with soap. But look, today it's a little different. I mean, you can't just go around throwing, wooden sticks at students and washing their mouth out with soap, right?
No, you can't. And when I was coming up, we had, and I think we need to go back to this. We do need to have vacation Bible school and putting these children back in church, because Sister Clark used to walk around with a switch with the babies and making us march and singing, "We are soldiers in the army." We have to fight, although we have to cry. Me crying because she back behind you. If you don't know your books of the Bible, she's spanking that little book. We have to hold up the bloodstained banner, But I'm just telling you, my thing is that so many times parents are not, a lot of parents are not even taking accountability for their children's actions. A lot of parents are sending their children, but I'm not saying that this has happened with these children. I'm definitely not likening this to that situation, but it is. I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and they are begging and screaming to get out of the profession, and they need to, because sometimes little Johnny is a nightmare. And I've had a little Johnny before in my classroom, and his mother did not, want to say that he had an issue. She did not want to discipline her son, and she sent that fool to me every day. I hate to say fool. He had foolish behavior. She sent that boy to me every day to disrupt the class. I was powerless to do anything about it except for write it down, on a sticky note and deny him a gold star that day. And there's so many things that we can do to support and educate. These children are fearless. Some of them have no respect for the authority and the police officers that are in school. They challenge them. You ain't my mama, and then they record everything that you do in the classroom, which I get it, because now we're really holding people accountable. For me,
yeah, it's both sides, right? Perry, I mean, real quick, I know we are way over time. We're gonna have to close out, but real quick, isn't it both? It's all sides, right? It's the kids.
It's all sides.
Many of the kids are just off the chain. The teachers are off the chain. The parents. When I go I go to all the parent teacher meetings. Me and my wife, we go to all of them, right? And we always hear the same story. You go there and you got always, unfortunately, the teachers and the school authorities outnumber the parents that come to parent teacher, right? And you hear the teachers say left and right, we wish more parents cared. And so everybody, because in a lot of houses, unfortunately, grandma and granddad is raising the kid, right? Or the mother is a single mom and she's got 2-3 jobs and the kid is basically raising himself. So we got a lot of issues here. The teachers are tired, they're underpaid, they're worn out. COVID has really, really amplified these things, Perry. But the optics in this case, sometimes the optics are worse than what the situation is. But the optics here, you have this white man and these 2 black kids. And that optics in itself
deserves to be fired.
At the least.
Oh yeah, definitely. And also, I think when it comes to being a teacher, my mother was a teacher, and I grew up around her group of friends were teachers, and I've seen the difference between a teacher who has control and shows no fear and can hold those kids accountable without a switch.
That's right.
Compared to a teacher who's afraid when walking in the classroom and speaking to those kids and has no control.
That's right.
And I think, yes, it is a difficult situation. Yes, the kids are off the chain. Yes, they should get battle pay. They should wear armor, all that type of stuff. But at the same time,
I agree with you, Adrian.
At the same time, you are control of that space.
That's right.
And if you are fearful of that child in your classroom, you lost it even before you began to teach them, because they sense fear and they will push you and push you and push you until you break. So it's both sides. How strong are you to lead and teach? And then again, how strong are those parents to control their children to say, don't you dare act up because you represent me. If we had more parents who told their children, you represent me, act right, we would not be in this situation. Unfortunately, we don't have parents. Certain parents don't do that, whatever social economic status they are. There are parents who don't parent.
And you also, as you mentioned earlier, as it was mentioned earlier, is that village is long gone. That whole, Aunt Shirley down the block or Mr. Joe over there, that is long gone, and that's unfortunate because, many of us, my age, we grew up in a time still where the neighborhood. Actually, if you got even at school, you go to school, you got a line, and you knew that Steve was in the class. He's gonna tell his mom, and his mom was gonna make sure that your mom knew. And we don't have that anymore, and we also don't have that look, right? I know the kid you could do that. There it is. There it is. That look. It was all about the look. Once you got the look, sometimes the look was worse than getting a whooping. It was worse because you knew. but anyway, we appreciate Perry Busby. We appreciate Andrea Carter, Cincinnati Herald, Perry Busby, of course. Thank you. With Bobby Henry down there at the West Side Gazette, West Side. And of course, Nakia Cooper, Bayou Beat in Houston, Texas. We appreciate y'all. Thanks for joining us today on Twitter Talk with Let It Be Known. We will see y'all tomorrow.